Are you a woman in the corporate world striving to break barriers, challenge unconscious bias, and lead the way for women in leadership roles globally? If so, this is the podcast for you. Introducing Leading Ladies Who Lunch. The lunch hour is usually the time when colleagues get together for real, honest conversations about work, life, and everything in between. In each episode of Leading Ladies Who Lunch, we'll delve into insightful discussions and share actionable strategies to help you navigate corporate life. Co-hosted by me, Cicy George, a leadership development architect and inspirational speaker. I'm thrilled to share my experience and expertise on leadership, mentorship, and organizational intelligence to help you own your career.
And me, Rachel Lowndes, CEO and founder, imposter syndrome expert, and mindset coach at Rachel Lowndes Coaching and Consulting. Passionate about helping women conquer imposter syndrome and unleash their inner confidence to get the recognition and promotions they deserve.
Jam-packed with insightful conversations, expert advice, and inspiring stories from a diverse group, we'll explore how to overcome obstacles, shatter those glass ceilings, and build unshakable mindsets to unlock your true potential. So whether you're sipping a coffee or enjoying a meal at your desk, tune in for a no-host bar lunchtime chat. Episodes will be dropped every 2 weeks. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button.
Leading Ladies Who Lunch, empowering women, one conversation at a time.
Hello, welcome back to the Leading Ladies Who Lunch podcast. Rachel, how's it going? So good to see you.
Good to see you too, Cicy. How are you? I have been so busy lately. I just did a speakers boot camp for the last 3 days, just like end of last week over the weekend. Super amazing, but also like imagine doing a 3-day intensive with, like 15-hour days back to back. It was pretty full on, really full on. But you know what? I tell you what, talk about being outside of my comfort zone. Like, really broke some of those fears and limiting beliefs down, some of the stuff that we talked about in the last episode. Yeah, push yourself out of your comfort zone. There's definitely some genuine fear going on. Like I had a full mental breakdown at one point, and I think a lot of people in the room did too. So it's kind of good to share that type of experience. Like public speaking is quite difficult for a lot of people, and so one of the things you have to do to overcome it is put yourself out there, out of your comfort zone. But yeah, I'm so pumped about what I learned and also about the future. So yeah, got lots of ideas from that.
Ooh, I can't wait to hear. And I definitely want to catch up with you about that. And, I can totally relate to, growing that public speaking, public presentation skill set. I actually took a boot camp here in New York City a few months back called Speak Like a CEO. And it was really not only informative, but it gave me a really great perspective that I've carried forward. So I can definitely hear you on that aspect.
Maybe we should do an episode on that.
Oh, I think we should. Speaking of being a lifelong learner, so a few weeks ago, I was catching up with one of my mentees, and they mentioned how sometimes they have a hard time saying no to extra work assignments, especially when they're already feeling bogged down by their workload. And I remember also feeling like that. Was that something that you ever struggled with?
Well, that's interesting because I guess taking on extra work wasn't really something like of an issue or something that I recognize as being taking on extra work, because the very nature of the job I did in advertising meant that I literally couldn't say no to anything. I managed all the kind of work across the agency, the campaigns, the resources, and I had to make sure that we had the ability to deliver to our deadlines, whatever that takes. So, I mean, I think the very nature of the business is you just kind of have to get it, like you have to get it done kind of thing. So no is rarely a word that you're allowed to use. I didn't feel empowered to be able to say no. It was like I did learn how to dress the no in a different way actually over time. Like it's
Mm,
no, but here's maybe how we could solve that. You know what I
right.
mean? But even when I did try to say no, I was pretty much pushed into a corner. So that's how I had to learn to adapt, because that's obviously quite
Right.
frustrating. But in relation to taking on extra tasks and responsibilities, I didn't really struggle with it because, that was kind of the nature of the job. But I definitely did struggle with it more probably in my personal life, and when I was younger, but certainly not now. I'm happy to say no now.
I mean, that's really interesting. I think it's a tough topic because
Mm,
my mentee it definitely mentioned she had a hard time with saying no and setting up some boundaries, but also
mm,
just some of my friends, we've
yeah,
talked about it. It's come up as one of those, happy hour conversations too,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think
So,
we all feel that we have to take on extra responsibilities at work because we're often not empowered or feel empowered to say no without some sort of recourse. And
right.
this can be a problem when we don't realize how this affects our stress levels and anxiety by trying to do it all. If we don't set our own boundaries around this, then we can end up feeling very overwhelmed, which is why today we are talking about boundaries and how setting them is super important for your well-being inside and outside of work.
Exactly. So we really want what we're facing here is knowing how to set appropriate boundaries so
Mm,
you can say no or turn down extra or additional work respectfully,
yeah.
but still demonstrate that you are a team player and that you are empathetic, right?
Mm.
But, thinking about the workplace, what are boundaries? I mean, whoever talks about boundaries at work, I think it really is about knowing what work you already have on your plate, the
Mm.
time and effort that it would take to finish that work, and then also understanding what that buffer or the boundary is when you simply cannot take on anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say a lot of people struggle with this because, that thought process is, well, what if this goes as a mark against me, or it affects my promotion prospects, or it makes me look bad, but
Mhm.
but knowing when you've reached a limit is important because you literally can't do everything.
Right, right. It's a very common fear. Like I said, I know I felt that way in the past. And saying yes or no to extra assignments or projects at work is really difficult. There have
Mm,
been times in my career when I know I can take on additional work. So I'll reach out to my manager and let them know, hey, I've got
mm,
some extra bandwidth. But
mm.
there have been moments where and I haven't always been good at this, something I'm trying to work on. But it's when I know I'm reaching the top of my boundary and I
Mm,
don't have the bandwidth to take on any more.
mm.
But I'm asked to step in, and the next thing you know, my stress level is through the roof.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, there's potentially genuine fear around this because, inherently we are people pleasing and we want to A, make sure we don't let people down. B, we don't want this one thing that we've said no to be the reason that we didn't get promoted. And C, fundamentally we want to be liked. We want to be accepted and feel like we belong. And so part of that is saying yes to everything.
Right, exactly. Again, I had a really hard time with that. I always want to be liked. I want people to
Mm.
know that I'm there for them. And
Hmm.
that's why we have to unpack this and empower our listeners to set healthy and appropriate boundaries, but also being strategic with what you're taking on as an additional work responsibility. So let's start with some of the different scenarios, maybe obvious scenarios we might face, right? All right, I'll start with this one. So, in some workplaces, the culture is, I'm going to say, very polite, and
Right.
saying no isn't a thing.
Mm.
And so people approach those situations with a lot of caution and sensitivity, like,
Mm.
where I am right now. The culture is very nice. And
Right.
people don't want to hurt other people's feelings, or they don't want to make it look like they're not ready to chip in and help. But there is a downside to that.
Mm.
And also, I think it could be cultural. It's culturally inherent to always say yes to things when you're asked.
Yeah, I mean, like it's nice to work in an environment where everyone wants to help each other, but it also is it can go against you. There's always a yin and yang to everything, isn't there? And
Right.
From my experience, I feel millennials, and especially Gen Z, are very good at setting their boundaries and saying no. I've been astounded actually. It's cool. I
I
mean, it's
know.
not, it's not something I saw when I was in my early career, but definitely see
Yep.
it now in younger executives. In my day, don't you just love it when people say my day?
Uh,
Saying no just wasn't really accepted. You're kind of just happy that you had a job and did whatever you could to keep.
mhm.
So Cicy, like, what are some of the challenges you've had with these boundaries and taking on extra work over your career?
Well, first of all, saying things like in my day, I feel like I've just aged 20 years. But I agree with you. And I also see that the younger generation, they're more comfortable with saying no. So something that I'm, taking a nod from their book.
Mm,
All right. So some of the interesting situations where I could have said no have been like this. So I'll give you one example.
mhm,
This is very common too.
mm,
So you have a new team member who just joined your team and you are asked to onboard and train them, show them the ropes, right? To the new kid on the block.
yeah.
Now, the person I had to train was a lot younger, and it took extra hand holding with that person for them to get used to things, for them to get acclimated to the new environment. So, like you can imagine, it took up a lot of my time. And
Mm,
so, the priorities and deadlines I was already managing, things were shifting.
mm.
Now, of course, I wanted to show to my leadership that I'm a team player, but it also ended up with me having to, have more work just to catch up and make sure that I'm on track with everything else.
Yeah, I think, with onboarding, this just has to be done. You've got to spend time now. Otherwise, you're going to spend more time later correcting those errors. And it feels like such a bind, like you really don't want to do it because also, like, things that come naturally to you in the workplace, like, it's hard to explain sometimes, but, you've got to kind of take that extra step to explain it. But it's
Right.
totally unavoidable. No one likes having to do this, but, it's one of those things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, Rachel. I mean, I think it is, you're right, it's unavoidable, because they're new and they just don't know. But
Mm,
I also think, just going back to that one particular circumstance, there were certainly other team members who
mm,
didn't have as much going on, who could have been asked, right?
mm.
So I think that, got to share the love in
Yeah,
terms of workload and the onboarding and training.
yeah, totally agree with that.
Um, so the other situation I've had is, all right, a manager has asked me to step in and take over as the lead for a project. All right. So
Mhm.
now in this situation, I'm thinking, oh gosh, my manager is asking me to take the lead on a really important project.
Right.
How could I possibly say no?
Yeah.
What was going through my head was, oh, if I said no here, then I would definitely be taken off the list for any future promotional
Mhm.
opportunities, right? That's what you would think.
Mhm.
Um, or even how would this reflect on me and my brand? What would they then say to their leadership about me? Oh, Cici is not taking on extra work. She's out of the runnings or something like that. And just saying it out loud is, stress inducing. And I'm sure our listeners can relate to that.
Oh yeah, I'd say so. I mean, genuine fear, around this, and the issue is that you have like no control over those feelings or that situation. Like those thoughts are just going to start going around and round and round, and
Mhm.
the only thing you should do is like be honest about your capacity to take it on. Also, I think it depends on if this additional work is going to add to your career goals or just be an exercise in like managing the manager, like going back to that people pleasing and wanting to be liked type of thing.
Ooh, I like that. Managing the manager or managing up as the phrase that I'm used to.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell which way it really is going to go.
Mm,
All right. So this next example, I've
mm,
had a colleague now ask me to do some data analysis for a report they were working on.
right.
And, they were just so bombarded, they couldn't get to it. All
Mhm,
right. So again, this is the people pleasing part of me. I want to be a team player and show that I'm supportive.
mm,
That's my go-to response. But this one particular time, I remember being really stressed with just other projects and, things were happening in my personal life. It was just, really just a tough time. I
Mm,
had my own deadlines and a big presentation that I had to deliver to like
right.
75 corporate executives.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, so this colleague comes over and they're telling me, "Hey, I really need your help. You're so good with this. I need to get all these numbers crunched." And I'm trying to do my best to keep my facial expression from revealing how I really felt about the ask. But as you can probably guess, I said yes. And I ended up working a few late nights to finish the work that I wasn't getting to during the day.
Oh, which only leaves you feeling stressed, anxious, and resentful. You do a better job than me than holding your facial expression. I think I literally just wear it all over.
Yeah. Again, this is the people pleasing part of me that I work really hard to mask what I'm showing here.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because part of you wants to, be there for you, be that team player and show that, you are interested in helping people, but also there's that
Uh-huh.
other side of it, which is I want to be liked and I don't want to let people down and I want to make sure I look good,
Right,
So yeah,
right.
it's an interesting situation, isn't it?
Yeah, precisely. That stress cycle of worrying about what other people think and, when you don't say the extra work, it's really tough.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
So, why do you need to be careful about what you say yes and no to and the boundaries you set? As I was contemplating and reflecting about this,
Mm,
there were a few things that came to mind that I think are important for consideration.
mm,
That first one is I think you would want to be protective of your own workload. So do you have time to commit to that assignment that you're being asked to do or take on, but
mhm,
also without sacrificing the quality of something else you're working on?
mm.
So that's why I think when you're getting asked, for extra work or to take on extra work, you have to be clear and you have to understand how much work and time it will require. So I think you have to ask a lot of questions to make sure that you have clarity.
Yeah, clarity is key in this instance. You also got to make sure from a priority point of view that you can actually achieve it. Like putting yourself
Mhm.
under that additional pressure and to the detriment of your own workload is probably not a good idea.
Right, right, exactly. Definitely not a good idea when it comes to your brand, okay?
No.
So, second, I think you need to be strategic. So, we just kind of alluded to that. You need to be strategic with the extra work that you're taking on. So think about what this new assignment will do for you. How will it build your portfolio? Are
Mm,
these other additional skills that you might gain from that
mm.
extra work that you're being asked to do? So, this is like the what's in it for me part or the with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Right? We got to think about that with them, because it has to do something for us in addition
Yeah,
to helping.
yeah, totally. Totally. 100%.
And then I would add here, I think the third is, what does it say about your brand? So what I was thinking about here is as you build your brand, I think you also have to show people and demonstrate that you aren't a simple yes person.
Yeah.
By showing the requester or whoever's asking you that you are strategic about your decision, it lets people know that you are not a pushover. If you
Mm,
truly can't commit, just let the requesting colleague know why. And then also to show that you are a team player, try to offer alternate solutions or maybe how to reshuffle the work so that you can, again, spread the love and
mhm.
it can be more evenly distributed. And that, I think, will reflect positively on you and your brand.
Yeah, I mean, you need to ask yourself, is this going to help or hinder my time, my
Mhm.
career, my brand, what I'm trying to do? Also, like, I think when you do set those boundaries, you stop that kind of continued influx of requests for help because
Right.
people know whether you're going to be able to help or not by the types of things you say yes to. And so
Mhm.
then you don't feel like you're overwhelmed with these, like, oh, someone else has asked me, oh, I feel like I've got to say yes. You know what I mean? It's like you're
Right.
controlling just how much you actually bring into your world. And of course, we're going to say yes to things and help people out. Like that's, that's how we're built, but we don't have to say yes to everything. And I think it's really
Yeah.
clear that you send the message that you're not the yes person. So yeah, to your point.
Right.
But
Yes. Yeah. Brilliantly said. Thank you for
yeah,
adding that, Rachel.
no
All
problem.
right. So let's talk through a few strategies that all of you who might be grappling with saying no to extra work and setting healthy boundaries, a few things that you can incorporate into your practice. All right. So first, we've talked about this, but make sure you understand the time commitment and the level of additional work it'll take before you give an answer. So again, you want to ask clarifying questions so you are fully informed before you dive right in and give your response. Then you'll want to take a look at your current workload and see where you might need to make adjustments to get that work done in the requested time frame. And if you don't think it will work, simply have a conversation and explain why you can't take it on.
Yeah.
And I'm going to add here, we've talked about this, but free yourself from worrying about what other people might think or say about you. Once you've given them a reason why you simply cannot do this, any other narrative is not your problem.
Yeah, you really don't have to take on others' work. It's actually okay for you to say no if you can't. And remember, you have work to deliver too, and a responsibility to deliver it at a high level that makes you feel good about your own work. So, if someone needs help, of course, hear them out, ask key questions to truly understand their need, and either offer to pick one part up if you can help, or let them know that you are unable to in this instance due to your own deadlines or your own workload, and maybe, as we've talked about, suggest some solutions which then is going to leave them with some form of value, and like you haven't just like blanket said no. People
Right,
come to you for help for a reason, so try and leave them with something so that
right,
even if you can't help them with that project, you've kind of helped them with some insight or a way that they can get some help with that project.
exactly.
And I think it's really important to say that there's no point taking something on for the sake of pleasing others. This is just counterintuitive.
Exactly. Exactly. Thanks. Thank you. So, wherever you are in your career journey, our hope is that you can take away these insights from this episode. Saying no to extra work does not indicate that you aren't a team player. In fact, it shows that you are strategic.
Yeah.
Consider, right, what the work will do for you. Remember the WIFM, what's in it for me. And finally, get a clear understanding of how much time and work it'll actually take, and then decide for yourself. And if it doesn't work out, explain to the requester why you can't commit to take on the assignment and offer a workaround.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are all really strong. And I'll repeat what I said before. There's no point taking something on for the sake of pleasing others. This is just counterintuitive to your career and your own stress levels. Well-being.
Well said. Well, thank you for listening to this episode of the Leading Ladies Who Lunch podcast. If we can leave you with one thought, how are you going to set up healthy boundaries in the workplace? If you like this episode, we would be so grateful if you can share with your friends and tag us on social media at Leading Ladies Who Lunch. Your reviews of this podcast mean so much to us. We'd love it if you can rate it and subscribe to the show.
Remember, you can find us and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcast platforms. Subscribe to stay up to date with the latest episodes and follow us on Instagram at Leading Ladies Who Lunch.
Stay tuned for another great episode in 2 weeks.
Until then, stay sassy. Thank you for joining us on the empowering journey at the Leading Ladies Who Lunch podcast. We hope you've enjoyed our insightful discussions, actionable strategies, and inspiring stories that we break down during each episode. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to Leading Ladies Who Lunch on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. And remember, the conversations you've heard on this podcast are just the beginning of your journey. Let your voice be heard, inspire change, and continue breaking barriers as you lead with authenticity, resilience, and unwavering determination.
Until next time, keep embracing your leadership potential, challenging the norms, and shaping a better world for women in the workplace. Leading Ladies Who Lunch, empowering women, changing lives.